be Bill Barr's worst nightmare. Bob Mueller is ready to break his silence and testify, and he's speaking directly to the House Judiciary Committee about it. There might be reasons Mueller is bypassing Barr's DOJ on the talks. Barr trashed Mueller's report, ripped his work, and slammed his professionalism.
I think that if he felt that he shouldn't go down the path of making a traditional prosecutive decision, then he shouldn't have investigated. That was the time to pull up. The letter's a bit snitty, and I think it was probably written by one of his staff people.
So that testimony coming hours after we learned about Mueller's letter to Barr, where he was concerned that Barr's summary, quote, did not fully capture the context, the nature, and the substance of his work. And this is important, conclusion. And on the White House side, lawyers attacking Mueller in the letter, calling the Mueller report a, quote, law school paper, saying it only produced political statements. Glenn Kirshner over here already shaking his head. Mueller has played this entirely by the book. But with new lines of attack from both Barr and the White House, could he say more under oath? Might he decide to answer the ultimate question, did Trump commit the crime of obstruction of justice? Mueller's longtime colleague, former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner, worked directly with Mueller in the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. Here is what Glenn told Ari one day before the Mueller report dropped.
I still have faith in Bob Mueller. Perhaps selfishly, he taught me how to be a federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C. I don't think Bob Mueller will let injustice stand. If Barr continues down the road of deception, I do not believe Mueller will let it stand. Right. When the time is right, he'll stand up and he will tell the American people the truth.
And he's back here now, former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner. Glenn, good to talk to you today.
Good to see you,
Thanks for joining us. First, I want to know, how closely did you work with Bob Mueller? How well do you know him?
So I kind of feel like I worked with Bob Mueller before Bob Mueller was Bob Mueller. And, you know, he was my direct supervisor as chief of homicide in the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. He brought me to the homicide section. He taught me how to be a federal homicide prosecutor. So what was nice was he was right next door, and I would go in and out of his office all day long because he was teaching me how to do it. We're talking about tactical decisions, evidentiary decisions, plea offers. And I learned from the man. And, you know, that's why I'm sitting here shaking my head and taking deep breaths when I hear Barr say things like, well, you know, Bob's report was kind of snitty and it was probably written by a staffer. I mean, anybody who knows Bob Mueller knows that that's disrespectful. It's inaccurate. Bob doesn't do snitty. I mean, Bob does serious and measured, and Bob reaches conclusions based on the facts, based on the evidence, based on the law, sans political considerations. That's who Bob Mueller is. And I'll tell you, he is really the king of circumspection, and he's the consummate rule follower. And because of that, he was unable to indict a sitting president, right? And because of that, he wouldn't say, even though I can't indict him, guess what, American people? Guess what, Congress? He committed lots of offenses. Why? Because as he set out in Volume 2, it's unfair. If a man can't have his day in trial, in court, and if a man can't defend himself and clear his good name, then we prosecutors don't stand up and announce to the world he committed crimes because he doesn't have a vehicle to defend against it. So he is the consummate rule follower on the one hand, but Yasmin, on the other hand, he is completely driven by the truth and by doing what's right. And right now, and I think the reason we saw that letter that he fired back at Barr, which said, listen, I'm going to read between the lines. Listen, sport, you mischaracterized my investigation and my conclusions, and as a result, the American people, I think, are being confused. In fact, I think that was Barr's goal, was to confuse the American people. So now, but there are these two Muellers, and I think they are at odds with one another. The rule follower versus the guy who's got to correct the record.
So how do you think Mueller's going to play this in his testimony? Will he be forthcoming?
Yeah, well, yes, he'll be forthcoming, but how much will he?
How far will he go?
Yeah, because the question is, does he have to bend or break the rules of not indicting a sitting president or announcing that a sitting president committed crimes in order to correct Barr's mischaracterization? Now, I am my own worst enemy, because I also predicted that Barr would be a good, honest institutionalist and would rise to the challenge of being Attorney General in these most difficult times. Instead, we know he's now a charter member of the law firm of Giuliani, Sekulow, and Barr, the president's law firm, or maybe the president's PR firm. So I was wrong about Barr. He has proven that he is not an honest AG.
But you don't think you're wrong about Mueller?
I know I'm not wrong about the character. The man Mueller is. I'll get in a foxhole and fight the enemy with Bob Mueller any day of the week. I think now that the White House has even challenged him and said, you should have made a prosecutorial decision. Even Barr is now complaining, you should have made a prosecutorial. I think Mueller will say, okay, I don't really have to bend the rules. What I have to do is correct the record. And I have to address the mischaracterizations by Barr. And I think he'll stand up and say the president committed obstruction of justice offenses. Yes, I do. I think he has to. I think he has to. And I think he has said as much, Yasmin, because think about it. Volume 1 said, I find insufficient evidence of conspiracy. Volume 2 said, if I found insufficient evidence of obstruction, I would say so. I cannot say so.
Then what, Glenn? Then what? If Bob Mueller stands up in testimony in front of Congress and says he believes the President of the United States of America committed obstruction of justice after investigating him for 2 years, and he has 480 pages to prove it, then what?
Then Congress issues every subpoena for every individual who has evidence supporting what Bob Mueller concluded. There should be witnesses lined up outside of Congress's door ready to testify. And you know what? If they fail to testify because the president is trying to muzzle them, fine. Move on to the next one. We'll deal with contempt and criminal enforcement and civil enforcement. But next witness, next witness, next witness, line them up and start to show the American people what in the world this president has been doing. That's what I think America has been thirsty for so long. Circumspection is great, but timidity is going to kill us. We need to hear from the witnesses.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.